think that all the miracles took place in the Bible as they're described.
Science may prove that miracles cannot happen.
The person who believes in the miracle stories needs to question the morality of their God. It seems absurd to believe in a God that will only help a few and not the many.
God is an omnipotent being, so he can obey or disobey the laws of nature as he chooses.
I think that there are modern day miracles, but just not as described in the Bible. Things like the circuit board are miracles for me.
I do think that miracles still occur today. For example, if someone's cured after they've been diagnosed with a terminal illness and there really isn't any other explanation, then that must be the result of divine intervention.
I don't think there is a God who causes miracles. Miracles arise out of superstition, mass hysteria, and like a natural human instinct to want to contemplate the existence of something more.
Back in the days when religion did come about and there was miracles, how do you know it wasn't just magic or a form of illusion to fool people to say, yes, come join us?
First, we need to be clear what we mean by the word miracle. Strictly speaking, a miracle is an event, any event, that might be interpreted as God revealing himself in a special way. There's a car crash, the survivors have a miracle escape. They might thank God for his protection. Events like that don't necessarily mean a law of nature has been broken. It's all a matter of what significance you might read into it. Now, the problem lies with miracles that would require a law of nature to be broken. Those recorded in the Bible and the sacred writings of other religions. Or those modern-day miracles that Lucy spoke of.
I do think that miracles still occur today. For example, if someone's cured after they've been diagnosed with a terminal illness.
The kinds of cures reported by pilgrims to Lourdes in France, for example. What are we to make of them? In particular, what does science have to say about the subject? Well, certainly science shows that the laws of nature are obeyed with remarkable consistency. And to the extent that the philosopher David Hume once declared, "No testimony is sufficient to establish a miracle." So, is that it? No, is Alexandra right?
Science may prove that miracles cannot happen.
Karl Popper, another philosopher of science, showed that proof in science is very elusive. In fact, he held that scientific statements were never verified. They could be falsified, but not verified. That was because you could never be sure that you had covered all possible circumstances. Nevertheless, it has to be said that the study of science, it does incline one to be sceptical about miracle claims. In favour of miracles, we have Michael.
God is an omnipotent being, so he can obey or disobey the laws of nature as he chooses.
In other words, God set up the laws of nature, they're God's laws. He can do what he likes with them. In addition, if one is a Christian, one believes that Jesus was the Son of God, which makes his time on earth a very special one-off occasion. So perhaps miracles at the time of Jesus were not all that surprising. So, does that mean religious believers can now go ahead and happily accept all the miracles recorded in the Bible and in the other sacred writings? Well, before doing that, I suppose the first question to ask of any miracle is whether there might be a perfectly natural explanation of it. The parting of the Red Sea to allow the Israelites to escape from Egypt. It's been suggested that it might have been due to freak weather conditions, a very high wind forcing the water to retreat. The casting out of devils. That today might be regarded as the work of a good psychiatrist. Then one has to ask whether the story might have been generated through, some kind of misunderstanding of some sort. Jesus walking on the water. The disciples are in a boat on the Sea of Galilee and they see Jesus walking on the water. Biblical scholars have pointed out that if you go back to the original account, written in Greek, one finds an ambiguity. The phrase walking on the sea has another translation, walking by the sea? No. Was Jesus simply walking by the sea, on the seashore, not on the sea? Someone during the telling and retelling of the story got hold of the wrong end of the stick. But having said all that, very few of the miracle stories can be accounted for in those ways. So what about all the others? Well, it's here that religious believers like myself, we have to come to terms with an uncomfortable fact. People in ancient times did not think scientifically the way we do today. Far from it. They took a positive delight in tales of wondrous happenings. We can see this in the many writings that did not get into the Bible. Apocryphal means questionable. Here we read, for example, how Jesus, as a schoolboy, made a clay model of a bird which promptly came to life and flew out of the window. It's no wonder these writings did not get into the Bible. But what we find there does raise a worry. You know, if this make-believe, if this was going on in the writings that did not get into the Bible, might not something of the same sort of thing, to a lesser extent one hopes, but might not something of the same sort of thing be going on in the Bible? Some scholars say yes. You can see this if you place the writings of the New Testament in chronological order, in the order in which they were written. This is how we find them in the New Testament: Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, followed by Paul's letters. But if you place them in the order in which they were actually written, first comes Paul's letters, and then we get Mark's Gospel, Matthew, Luke, and John. Now, in Paul's letters, the first of the writings, there are no miracles, not one, apart from the resurrection of Jesus. In Mark, we have miracles, yes, plus the resurrection of Jesus. Matthew and Luke, they used Mark as a source, so they include Mark's account of miracles, plus others of their own. And finally, we come to John, who has yet more miracles. Put in the order of writing, it does appear that the number of miracle stories might be increasing with time. Take a specific example: Jesus' arrest in the Garden of Gethsemane. According to Mark, the earliest of the Gospel writers, one of Jesus' followers cuts off the ear of the servant of the high priest. And that's it. No, he cuts it off. When we come to Luke's later account of the same incident, we find that the ear is cut off, but then Jesus miraculously puts it back on. He heals it. A miracle. But if that's what actually happened, a miraculous healing, why no word from Mark? Why miss out the punchline? Presumably because at the time Mark was writing, there was no punchline. So, what's going on? A deliberate attempt to mislead us?
Back in the days when religion did come about and there was miracles, how do you know it wasn't just magic or a form of illusion to fool people to say, yes, come join us?
We have to be careful. Now, earlier we saw how people in the past made much use of stories. Stories addressing deep, timeless spiritual questions. The Adam and Eve story, for example. The miracle accounts also have deep spiritual meanings. Jesus cures the man born blind. As he does so, he talks about the need of the Pharisees, who are looking on, to cure their blindness, in their case, spiritual blindness. At the feeding of the multitude, Jesus says, anyone who comes to him will never hunger, will no longer experience spiritual hunger. Again, the miracle illustrates a rather difficult, more abstract kind of truth. So, I don't know, perhaps we should stop worrying too much about which of the miracles actually happened as such. We're never going to be able to prove it one way or the other anyway. Perhaps instead we should concentrate on the inner spiritual meanings, the ones that they illustrate, and how those meanings impact on us today. So, according to the scientific outlook, are miracles possible? Do they actually happen, or are they just superstitious fairy tales? Are these stories illustrating spiritual truths?